All right, I'm here with Frank Sondors, co-founder and CEO at Salesforge. Salesforce blends AI agents and humans to maximize sales pipeline. They went from 0 to 3 million ARR in 12 months, which is pretty impressive. So I have Frank join here. Thank you for joining, Frank, to talk all about how they did it and some of the biggest levers here. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, my bit of a background on me. So being in the space for well over a decade, predominantly in sales, frontline sales, and leading large sales teams. Started my career at Google.
And Salesforge is bootstrapped.
So no, however, we were always profitable as a business, and then we did
Okay.
raise $500,000 last
Okay.
year because we
Okay.
thought we were gonna burn, but then we didn't end up burning at all. And then
Are you going to raise more or keep it at that?
yeah, we're planning to raise more, but so we are VC backed. I always say, you can go down the one path or the other path. So one path is like, naturally the VC path, right? So raise a lot of money and scale. The other path is like bootstrap path, more control, etc. Now,
Yeah.
you should definitely raise money, is my belief, if you're able to get to at least $100 million in ARR. So which is what we're all
You
about.
should raise VC if you're planning to get to 100 million or if you
Yes,
can
because
get.
No, but if you're planning to,
Yeah.
because
Okay. Fair enough.
the reason why I'm saying this is because typically you will always have competition. So I have competition, and in most other categories you have a lot of competition, right? And if your competitors, let's say some of them are bootstrapped, some of them get a lot of VC money, and some of them got a lot of VC money. So in my case, I have over 100 competitors, right?
Right.
So and each of them could be moving into different directions, etc. So how can I de-risk my business and making sure that I'm definitely getting to 100 million bucks? Well, even though I have very superior unit economics, high gross margins, etc. Yes, I am profitable. We're doing, the way you should be running a business, right? Lean and mean, etc. Trying not to hire too many humans, using automation softwares like N8 etc. We do all of that, but we still are very bullish. We want to get to the 100 mil as soon as we can because we do know we have hundreds of competitors out in the market that could be making trouble for us, right? And the team that executes the best, it's not about more money, but I can execute really well. But if you give me a war chest of cash, I can easily 10x that. So
And
it's
as
about
your
the
competitors, you consider all these go-to-market AI tools, AI
yes,
SDRs, AI agents in the
yes.
go-to-market space?
Yes, all of them. Essentially, all the above. Essentially,
Yeah.
that's my typical answer. Everybody is a competitor. So any tool that is helping a business to generate pipeline, and ultimately we're competing in one way or the other. Now, what we're actually competing against, we're competing against what we call point solutions. So everybody's typically building this one software and they want to build the most kick-ass software ever, right? So this is what we call the point solution approach. You build that software and you solve what it's called typically one part of the pipeline building process. But we as a business, what we do is we build a lot of software. So we exist for about 20 or so odd month, and we already have 6 products that we built over the last 20 months. So we build very aggressively. And the reason why we're building that aggressively is we're following this model that's called as the software compound model. We're essentially stacking software on top of each other, and we're aggressively building that, and we're selling these pieces of software to the same user and to the same buyer. So think of companies like Rippling in the US, think of companies like Salesforce, HubSpot, where you have these different hubs, and then you can sell it to the same customer. But instead of having this one brand, in our case, Salesforge, we have multiple brands. So we're building this sort of in a modular fashion. So
And you mean
can think of
Salesforge, Mailforge, Infraforge, Warmforge? This is what you're talking about?
Forges, yes. That's the Forge universe. That's the ecosystem that we're building. We just launched a brand new sort of page also on every single website to just kind of explain the logic, really, because that is really something different to everybody else. Now, the reason why this is also
it reminds
important,
me of Lempire, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming you're Lempire,
Yeah,
and then they have Lemlist and Lemwarm, and Taplio is part of it now too, and stuff like. Is that where the inspiration came from, or?
Actually, the inspiration didn't really come from them, but yes, there is definitely similarities there. That they also have multiple products. So yes, there are these multiple products, but we're gonna think of it this way. Maybe it's like gonna be a V 2.0 because we build a lot of products. So they focus on like a really specific products that they do, and they do them really well, right? And they're a very big business, and they've been very successful. Now, what we do is we are building aggressively a ton more, like double the amount of what they're building. And that's really the goal. So build very aggressively and to become really perceived in the market as what we call a proper ecosystem where you kind of a bit like Lego assembling these different things. So we try and not really clutter the main app with stuff. like the main app, so meaning the flagship product is called Salesforge. So it already will do a lot of things, but we're building these forges around a lot more than Lempire, for example, to then become this sort of modular sort of stack. Like you'll feel that there will be that sort of feel
So
of use
give
that
me your 1-minute thesis on why you think this is the classic approach. Would be you just have one product, one brand, one name.
Yeah.
And then you just have either multiple products within that brand or
Yes.
just different features, right? That you can have add-ons to, and you have different tiers. And you have the tier that includes
Correct.
the email warm-up, and then you have the tier that doesn't include the email warm-up feature,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
what's your 1-minute pitch or thesis on why it's actually better to pull them out as separate brands?
So we believe that the best way to build is what we call build vertically. So build that you definitely a lot of stuff within the platform, and then build horizontally. Now there's few reasons: better UX and UI. So if the typical user is very unsavvy, the typical user will only use, let's say in a super app, what we call, only 20% of the feature set. So if that's the case and the rest of the features are not being used frequently, do decouple them. So UX and UI is the first reason. Second reason is a monetization reason. You can maximize the monetization of that particular module significantly better because it's decoupled into a separate brand, separate website, separate everything. So you can have a separate go-to-market, a totally different go-to-market motion to the other product to maximize the monetization, right?
Do you have the
So
same people within your company working on these things, or is there literally a
yes.
head of marketing for Salesforge and a head of marketing for Warmforge? It's one
So
head of marketing, let's say.
it's one on the go-to-market front. It's the one team for now. In the future,
Yeah.
once we raise, there will be multiple teams. But for now, it's one team. However, the engineers, there's typically 1 or 2 engineers per product right now assigned, and they just literally work on that product and they dive deep on just that one product. So it's really the other team, the product engineering team. That's where we have already separation in terms of teams, and that everybody works on their own product. It's like essentially building a startup within a startup, and you don't build it sequentially. We literally build softwares in parallel. And we literally aggressively building, and we're building even more. We're launching another software this month already. It's going to be announced a couple of weeks, but there's another software already, right? This software completes our what we call ecosystem V1. We have ecosystem V1. We need to build X number of products to be perceived as an ecosystem, and then we can go to market and say, actually, we're an ecosystem. We're not like a point solution, and you should look at us differently. Now, so monetization was the second reason, but the third reason is the definitely monetization, definitely. Well, it's the go-to-market extension front that you can kind of, you can have a different go-to-market. Like literally, this product can have a, heavy influencer marketing, maybe strategy approach. This one just PPC approach. This one just SEO. So you need to, this is how you can then control, because otherwise, if you're all under one brand, you don't have the maneuverability essentially from a go-to-market standpoint, right? If it's all under one brand. When I talk to my go-to-market team and say, hey guys, we have 6 products, let's maximize the revenue across all the 6 products. You have the freedom to decide what is the best path for this product, best path for this product, best path for this product. And then if we need to plug in a bunch of different sort of consultants, agencies for different products, let's do that, right? And yeah, sometimes we have an agency working on this one, a consultant working on one product, but they may also work on 3 products and 4 products and so on and so forth, right? But really, yeah, the goal is to maximize the monetization of each of the products. And in the future, we're just going to have a go-to-market, or at least marketing team for each of the products, and they're going to be pushing them. So the really goal is to become a business within a business. It is one business entity, but the teams will be all separate from one another. And yes, they may be competing, whatever, right? But really, everybody will have their own KPIs, and maybe there will be like a sub CEO, what you would call a managing director for each of the brands, right? Think of it this way, right? So it's like running really lean and mean squads or teams, for each of the products, and because each of the products can easily become a multi-million-dollar business in its own, which is why we're building it, right? So when we build a product, we believe that it can be a standalone business product that, if needs to be, can be sold off or something can happen to this, but we're not betting on in just one brand. We're essentially de-risking the whole business, right? By having these multiple things, right? So there's multiple reasons like that you're kind of thinking back of your head. And the other reason maybe is it has nothing to do with UX or monetization, etc. It has to do with the market. So let's say when you are in a very, very crowded space, hundreds of competitors, you need to be doing things unique in one way or the other, right? So if you have a bunch of companies that are what's called super apps, and there's a lot of them, right? There's also, they like to zoom in for Apollo. There's like all super apps. They're doing a lot of features, cramming a lot of stuff into this. Yes, there are the worlds of like Empires. Yes, there's a few other, but really you don't have this, the behemoth, let's call it, of like the Salesforce or the HubSpot, which just does top of the funnel. And you can really call them the behemoth, the Google, nobody really comes to mind that has these multiple products. So this is why I also went on this journey, because I believe there's still space in the market where big enterprise companies will come up to you and say, Frank, I need my pipeline to be sorted. I want to buy product 1, 5, and 7 from you, right? To only buy what I need from you to maximize, essentially to only buy what I need, right? There's also this sort of thing that, when you buy these big softwares, a lot of the features, you don't need them actually. You're paying for them, but you're not using them, right? So like it's things like that. So when you've been a sales leader or when you've been using any other app, you feel like you're paying for something that you're actually not using. So the goal is to maximize the utility, I guess, of the software. So yeah.
So when you say you scale to 3 million ARR in 12 months, that's across those
Yes.
Warmforge, InfoForge,
Yes.
Salesforge. Okay. Now, is this setup, because it is quite, I mean, except maybe Lempire,
Mm.
I don't think I'm aware of. Maybe there's a little bit like 37 Signals, which has like Basecamp and Hey and Once, but they're really more separate products. They're not that integrated. Like they're not
Yes.
that complementary, right?
Yes.
So
We're
so
definitely looking at
they have more like a
implementation.
portfolio of products, let's say, right underneath one. Now, is this setup that you're running, this ecosystem approach, only really possible because of AI, or has this always been possible and it's just new? Like, is this only viable now for some reason?
Arguably, no, no. I think it just has to do down with if AI would exist, we would still probably do the same thing. It's just
Then
that
why
we
do you
have
think
some
it's so
other.
unpopular? Because that would have then be my guess. Like, what is the reason that I don't see more of them? It's probably because there's some new breakthrough that makes this viable. Because otherwise, there would already, if this was a good idea, there was already a proliferation of these types of ecosystem companies. If you had to, be a devil's advocate for your own thing, like, what's the reason that there's just not more of it?
Well, there's definitely two. Like, I mean, there's definitely two things where you're definitely using AI. So for naturally, we have things like Cursor today, that you can
Yeah,
use, right, to speed
that's
up
how
the
you can
development.
launch tools fast,
You can
right?
launch it faster. You could build faster, right? So you
Yeah,
could not build at the same, it's the same shipping velocity. You didn't have
yeah,
that, let's say a couple of years ago. But today you can have the shipping. So if you can actually have shipping velocity, that allows us to ship in parallel much faster.
yeah.
But still, the bottom line, it definitely boils down to strategy, right? The strategy is like shipping in parallel, shipping aggressively. If the investors say it's a really foolish idea, you don't listen to the investors. So because they expect you to ship sequentially, and I said you have to ship in parallel. And the
Mm.
sooner you get to the milestone, the better, essentially. But yeah, there's also there's definitely capabilities that we do that are because of DI, right? Why is the primary product so interesting for a lot of folks? Well, guess what? We can compute unique emails in any language, doesn't matter, German, French, etc. We can do that. We can carve them really well. Yes, we have our own AI agents, right, to ultimately help companies to build our pipeline with the least headcount. So yes, we do need these AI agents. Yes, we don't believe in the world of just agentic. We believe what we call the blend. Because we are definitely going to this world of where in any part of the organization, whether that's finance, sales, marketing, we do believe that we're heading into this world where humans work with agentic capabilities in tandem, right? And we just
Yeah.
want to do that really well in the world of what we call the pipeline building world, but there's other worlds as well, because there's a lot of these companies that still only believe in humans. So there's a lot of software that's designed just around humans, and then there's a lot of software that's popping up just for AI agents. And if you're a very
Hmm.
smart sales leader, so I used to be a sales leader, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, wait a minute. So I was using one of these legacy softwares that still actually exists, which is only designed for humans, and they're still only really designed for humans properly. And then there's a lot of software that's popping up, which is like AI agent software. But really, I don't need more fragmentation. I need,
Right.
if I'm executing from this one software, and it's all about pipeline building, right, with my sales team, etc. I just need one software. I just need where my sales team they sit in there, they do their stuff. And yes, I would love to have my AI agents to minimize the cost, right? And because it's very hard naturally to hire people, and then you have to fire them. Like there's a huge attrition problem right in the world of sales. I always say, so I hired hundreds of salespeople in my lifetime, and also fired hundreds of them as well. For every 10 salespeople that you hire today, only one person is really like a natural. Like you're really natural at your job. 2 to 3 people are very coachable, can be trained up, and can be somewhat good as the person that's natural, really. And then 60% is typically the dead wood. Really, they're not really
Hmm.
meant to be in sales, right? And the reason why all of us, including myself, we've been hiring a lot of those people is because we have a target to hit. We have to be bringing people that, even though they're not really qualified, you try and make them, you believe in all those individuals. But really, that's not how it works, because humans
Hmm.
were not born to be selling stuff, And yes, you can train some, but majority of them are unfortunately hopeless. And so if you know this fact, you know that, okay, how can we reduce the 60%? So really the business that we're in is reducing the 60% as close to 0% as possible, and then increasing the output levels of the 40%, right? The people that are really good at their jobs, how can we increase the output of the 40% and reduce the 60%? And by doing so, you're solving what we call this huge trend problem where you have what we call the CAC inefficiency, where essentially acquiring net new dollars is becoming more and more expensive. That's exactly the trend that we're going after, like on the macro level. And the line item that we're going after is like reducing heads in sales, specifically those heads that build pipeline, right? So, and the answer is not AI agents. It's just part of the puzzle. The answer is
Right.
the stack, the Apple experience, essentially. How do I build pipe with the least headcount? So it has to do with other things like infrastructure that we do, warming and data that we're going to do very soon. So it's all those things. You have to essentially imagine a software architecture for each of those softwares in a very
Yeah.
different way that can accommodate fewer humans with higher output levels. So you have to build that software in that particular way.
So give
And
me
we
a
don't charge for seats, we charge for consumption, right? Because we do believe that the CAC will shift from labor over to software. So you definitely should be charging for consumption, right? So that's exactly what we do.
give me just a quick definition of your ICP and ACV.
Sure. So ICP is US up to 100 employees, two types of ICPs, typically tech companies, VC backed, because they have to scale, right? So they're trying to figure out how to scale efficiently. And then the second
Yeah.
one, which is typically what's called the beachhead, is the agencies. They're essentially what we could typically describe like the middlemen, essentially people that are very good at your job, they're very knowledgeable as much as me, and they're just looking for the best in class tech stack that can generate pipeline for their customers, right? So there are a lot of
So kind
startups,
of
a lot of smaller
partners.
companies that meet. So yeah, so these are the two ones that we're kind of really focusing on. ACV, we're a bit like HubSpot. We started definitely in the SMB space because we have thousands of customers. Right now, the ACV will be like 1.5K right now.
Okay. And then one of the things that's interesting about you guys is that you say you're combining AI agents and kind of services people. What's the rough like breakdown of your revenue that's like classic SaaS spend versus now someone in your company is delivering a service to them that you charge for? Is it like
So you mean
50-50
like
or?
what we would typically say the human path versus the agent path? How much?
Yeah.
What's the reference for that?
Yeah.
I would say the agent path right now is about 10-20%
Yep.
of the business. Our take is that really it's going to get to about maybe 30-40% max, but still most of the majority of the revenue will be human driven. But it will be definitely a blend, just like we're blending right now. Because on the human path, essentially what we call, there's different type of subscriptions, etc. And for the agent path, we have a different subscription for the agent, right? So, and yes, there's the revenue associated to this path and to that path. Yeah, so right now it's 10-20%. So the biggest problem I think in the space right now, first of all, because the tech was really in its infancy last year, a lot of people had a really bad experience with the tech. And a lot of people are not really believers anymore in the agentic capability. But the tech is like getting really good this year. So there's one problem with that. The other problem with the AI agents just generally is that 99% of companies have never tried an AI agent. None of this stuff. So
Yeah.
you still have this sort of adoption. It's a bit like the internet moment, right? And like when you're having conversations with different people, they're like, "What AI agents? I haven't never even used the Zapier. You're talking to me about AI agents. What is this?
Yeah.
So even though our AI agents are fully autonomous, and you literally need to click a few buttons, we still assign a human on our end because people have not used AI agents, and we could set up
Totally.
this Slack channel for every one of them. We guide them, etc. And it's not very profitable to apply our own humans on that, but we know that if we're gonna give this piece of tech to a human, even though the tech is very good, you need to know what you're doing.
Sure.
Even though because as I said, it's like an internet moment. You need to make people get used to using these agentic capabilities in tandem with the current pipeline generation sort of workflow, right, that they have. And that's really I think the thing that we're going through this year and next year. Well, I think in the next 3 years, really, there's that adoption kind of thing that we're kind of going through as a whole market. And
Yeah,
it's not
makes
just in
sense.
sales, it's also in a bunch of other places.
So quick back of the envelope math, 1.5K ACV, 3 million ARR. So you have around 2,000 customers. Getting
Yep.
to 3 million ARR in 12 months, that's pretty fast. A lot of founders listen to this podcast. They want to they would like to grow that fast. What do you associate most of that growth to? If you have to reflect on what were the biggest levers, the best things you guys did, the best campaigns, programs, tactics, people you hired, like what did you do that enabled you to grow? Just quick.
So let me kind of give you a bit of a perspective. So for everybody, so we scaled to about $1 million in ARR without a single employee. So there's just 3 co-founders in the business who met on
Mm-hmm.
the YC matchmaking platform, and they scaled to $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now we scaled to $2 million with a few people in support and engineering without any go-to-market team. So no sales, no customer success, no marketing. At that point, I understood that I'm doing 10 to 20 meetings on a daily basis. It's time to pass on the baton to somebody else, to do stuff. And then we
Yes.
started to hire aggressively. And pretty much we got to 40 employees. So from 3 co-founders to 40 employees within about 12 months. So that's the kind of the speed that we're getting at.
Yeah.
We're not about hiring a lot of people. We're trying to, as I said, to use a lot of N8N stuff as we can, automate
Yeah.
as anything we can. But it's still, you need to hire bodies to kind of accommodate velocity and all the stuff that we need to ship really. Now, the best strategy. So it's definitely all about
Let's go by stage. So first phase, 3
yeah,
co-founders, no employees, getting to that first million in ARR. What do you do?
everything. Probably is the answer, right? I know it sounds weird because a lot of people are like, Frank, tell me this one thing that you did, or tell me this,
Yeah.
2 things that you did. And I can tell you it's not about 1 or 2 things. I probably did 20 things, and I just did them. I was grinding. You literally
All
grind.
right, just throw some out there. Throw a
Let's
list.
sure, let's go one by one. So I think kind of few ideas. What probably made the biggest impact? So the reason why, well, by the way, maybe why did I do all of these things is because if your ICP is in multiple platforms, so let's say Reddit, let's say LinkedIn, let's say Facebook, then you definitely need to have the visibility. I talk about it, it's like the share of voice, what the people talk about, share of search, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are in multiple platforms and if you can see Frank or if you can see the brand in multiple platforms, then it's called integrated marketing approach, where the probability of conversion significantly increases if you're in multiple places, right? That's why we did that. We know what is the buying
Sure.
cycle. It doesn't matter if it's SMB or enterprise, it's the same. If you see the same brand in multiple places, then people are like, I've seen this company somewhere in all these places, Reddit and LinkedIn, everywhere. Super important.
I
That's
would
why
I would
we
add
do it.
one caveat because I see
Yeah.
a lot of companies fail here, which is that the quality of the touch point matters. The
Yes.
quality of the email that you send, the quality of the piece of content that you post on LinkedIn, the quality of the video that you put on YouTube, the quality of the Instagram reel or YouTube short that you share matters. And so what a lot of companies do wrong is that they try to do that, but what that ends up doing is that they put out mediocre stuff on everything,
Mhm.
and that really doesn't build a lot. Yes, they might see you around, but they're like, nah, that's kind of vanilla, not super insightful, some fluffy stuff. Well, if you maybe do the opposite, and you said, we're only on LinkedIn, or we're only going to do email, or we're only going to do YouTube, you're just going to end up creating much higher quality stuff, which does a lot
Yeah,
more
and
to
I'll,
convince someone
I'll,
that
I'll
you're
give you an
worth paying
example. Yeah,
attention.
we
Yeah.
definitely have also deprioritized some items. So what
Yeah.
would that be? So for example, my LinkedIn profile exists for well over 10 years, and I built up, a huge network on LinkedIn. Most of them are prospects still, but still built up, huge network on LinkedIn. And I haven't built my audience on X, so Twitter, right?
Hmm.
So I knew that, right? I'm pretty much a nobody on X, but I'm a somebody definitely if you look at my profile on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
if you know that, you definitely spend majority of your time, 90 pretty much 9% on LinkedIn versus X. So yes, you also need to. So the best way to focus is to defocus. But
Hmm.
because you can say, okay, X definitely we're gonna park that, we're not gonna focus that. And yes, there are some channels which we just not dabbled into. Let's call Discord or whatever. So I mean, one thing is probably going to be common knowledge for a lot of folks maybe that are listening. But you definitely do things that don't scale by Paul Graham, right? You have to do things that don't
Yes.
scale, at least the first 100 customers and so. The founder brand was probably the main driver of
Okay.
the first $1 million. And what that means is making sure you're doing what I would typically describe feed domination on LinkedIn. You dominate the feed and the minds of your ICPs, right? So your goal is to connect with the ICPs and dominate the feed. And some people are going to call it social selling, but I call it feed domination, right? So people really enjoy the content. You're edutaining essentially what I call, which is
Yeah.
essentially education plus entertainment. And one of the things you can do really well, right? Because you're a founder, right? So one of the 3 founders essentially has to be on LinkedIn all day long because your ICP is on
Mm.
LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a gold mine, right? So we always
Was
do
that
that.
your responsibility?
Yes,
Yeah,
because the
you're
other
the
2 co-founders,
go-to-market
they're
front. Yeah.
engineers. So posting on a daily basis, all of that helps. Even though if people don't like your post or don't comment, it's fine. It's about reach. So when every post gets about, let's say on the average, let's say 5K impressions,
Hmm.
every post gets, and you do that, once a day, 25K impressions versus
Hmm.
paying to LinkedIn whatever the CPM rate right now is, which is very expensive. Like
Yeah.
it does pay off, right? But you definitely, yes, it's all about quality posts everywhere, wherever you go. Yes, I have my own Reddit profile. I have my my own X profile, right? All the profiles I have, yes, and you're trying actually to not to push the garbage down the throats of the individuals, but actually share something that's of value. People follow you, follow along the journey. But yeah, so that's one thing. The second thing that really is typically very common in this space is word of mouth. So if you have a good product, so typically word of mouth will kick in because salespeople ask other salespeople what sort of software they should get. They talk in WhatsApp groups, etc. So you need to kind of figure out a way how to engineer this conversation back and forth. The best way to do that, build a good product. So I know it's difficult, but build a good product is one. The other thing that you can do and definitely works and works for us and works for everybody else is affiliate. So we generate easily 6 figures in affiliate revenue in a year. So if 6 figures in revenue is generated thanks to affiliates, then there's something there, right? So never forget. So definitely explore.
And when you say affiliates, you have influencers who will post about Salesforge, and if someone signs up for Salesforge, they get a percentage of that subscription?
Yeah, it could be that. Could be just, because we work with a lot of agencies, right? So they would refer softwares. Yeah, there's a bunch of different websites. It could be influenced, but these are, all the links and yeah, if the conversion rate is high enough, people definitely want to put those affiliate links in a bunch of different places. But yeah, then you have this strategy of acquiring affiliates. But the way that we do it naturally is like when the user signs up, and if it's an agency, right, we definitely want to tell them about the affiliate program. And we definitely want to make sure they're pushing it, right? So because in the eyes of agencies make money, service, they get the service fees, right, from the customers, but they also want to get what's called the ancillary revenue on top of that, which is typically affiliate fees. But there's also other fees that you can generate from being a reseller, etc. Right? So there's these components which are very interesting. I can tell you, there's definitely some agencies out there that don't make nearly no money in service fees. They're just marketing these tools really well. Well that they literally generate sometimes 7 figures a year just by nicely marketing these tools.
And in contrast, I've definitely seen a lot more SaaS companies focus on this agency partner model where they realized they can sell to agencies, and then the agencies will do the distribution to their 10, 20, 50, 100 customers. And it's just a much more efficient go-to-market than just trying to acquire those customers directly. So I definitely see more and more software companies go that route.
Yeah.
And built natively for agencies, right? Because that often means white label. It means certain additional admin functionalities, et cetera, if you want to kind of go that route.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a white label as well, and we're launching another white label product. Actually, this week we launched it, where essentially you can strip out the whole branding. Like nobody will know that product is actually a product of Salesforge, unless you're gonna dig in code, of course. But typically, most of the users don't do that. But essentially, full-on white label, set up a subdomain, all that stuff, we can do that definitely, and that's very exciting for agencies, right? And then we just do a rev share deal essentially behind the scenes. Agencies are very pumped about that.
So do you then, with your founder brand on LinkedIn, is your main ICP agency owners, or is it sales leaders or founders of startups, let's say?
So it's a tricky one because because we're a consumption based business, right? Agencies are a lot more lucrative, right? Because we would make more money from that. But also agencies are also at the same time, margin was called squeezing businesses. They squeeze out the most margin. They jump to a lot of different softwares. That means they have a higher churn rate typically. It's very normal because agencies love to jump and explore different softwares a lot more aggressively than non-agency businesses, just normal startup founders, etc. Right? Because they stick around longer, right? They don't jump as much, right? So the downside is that they can churn a lot more aggressively, and they do typically churn. So that's why figuring out the stickiness of the agency business is also challenging for most of the companies. It's not just for us; it's just a normal thing in this what could describe sales technology space. Yeah, but you also need to build also features, right, for the agencies, like different type of features, white labeling features, what's called workspaces and a bunch of other features that they need to service their customers, right? And whoever has the best features, whoever has the best product, typically that's where agencies congregate because the switch over cost is rather low, right? So you really need to you're really forced to build a kick-ass product because if you're not going to do that, nothing will happen. So that's
you got founder brand, you got affiliates through agencies. What were some of the next bigger growth levers?
Next ones would be SEO. SEO still works, and particularly we double down on programmatic SEO. So that's the big one. You programmatically build pages, directories, and a bunch of other things. So just read about programmatic. There's different ways to do that. The next one would be
mostly AI generated?
No, actually not. No, we actually have a human. We tried with AI. It didn't rank that well. We just dropped the idea. But you can definitely do it with AI. The thing is, you need to be really sophisticated on what I would describe AI SEO topic to do that. So let's say we have a skill set gap or an issue there. And then we thought, okay, we could hire an agent, etc. And we're like, whatever, let's just do it manually. It's fine, And it just took us, a couple of weeks, and instead of getting somebody else, it's always that trade-off, right? Do you use AI, but then you need to find the right person for the AI, because even though you have a kick-ass tool, you still need the right person to use that thing properly, right? So we decided to do it manually. But yeah, I'm not saying AI is bad. It's just that you need a geeky person, that kind of AI SEO top. And then with that programmatic SEO piece, you also need to figure out how do you make sure that ChatGPT and Perplexity sends you a lot of traffic, right? So there's a whole topic, and there's a lot of tools that just track that today. So you need to make sure you're on Wikipedia and a bunch of other places. So essentially, you're floating a lot more out there, and ChatGPT picks up your content and references you. So things like that. So the next one is you also have to, as I said, where are your ICPs, and how can you, even though it's a small, very little traffic from that platform, but it's a very, very highly converting traffic. So for example, YouTube, the second largest search engine after Google, is a fantastic place, because people are like, okay, well, I need to generate some leads. So people go on YouTube. How do I write an email? Where do I get it? What's the right tool for this, etc. So they're asking the how-to question, in this space, because I told you most people are not born to sell, right? They don't know what they're doing. Right, and they think that all the tools will solve the problems, and all lots of magical AI will solve the problems. Doesn't matter. So you can build a lot of highly, highly valuable content, and we've done that. We literally have one guy who started with us. Initially, he started working on TikTok. We realized that TikTok doesn't work, and we dropped it. And we said, "Yo, listen, TikTok doesn't work, but you work. You're a really good guy, right? I really like everything that you do in camera, etc. How about you do YouTube?" And that's it. He took over YouTube, and YouTube is right now massively scaling, which is very nice. And
how did you figure out that TikTok is not working? Like, how much time did you give it, etc.?
Good question. We gave it about 4 to 5 months roughly before we dropped it. How do we track it? So, and this is another maybe learning which allowed us to accelerate massively, because we were getting learnings fast into the business, which allowed us to supercharge things, right? And that's attribution. So, big believer in what's called self-reported attribution. Where do you hear about us? And you need to have, and I would like not to argue about this, an open field where you just type in, where do you hear about it? And you will see a lot of random stuff. And that's great. And then you can post-process that random stuff, and then you make a decision, because the drop-down fields, they don't work, trust me, because typically the number one thing from a drop-down is the one where people say, so let's say, we're going to go on your site, and you're going to have a drop-down, right? Where do you hear about us? And if the first thing will be podcast, guess what? You're going to have most of the responses for that, right?
Yeah.
Because humans are lazy.
Plus, you're just missing out on super nitty-gritty information. Like, we sometimes get names of people. People sometimes paste the link of the exact LinkedIn post that they saw, right? And if you just have a drop down, they might say intro or LinkedIn, and you're missing out on this like next level detail info. So, I mean, I'm 100% with you. Free text field, make it a requirement.
A lot of people aren't, and I have to explain to them why an open field is the gold mine.
Yeah.
And people are typically saying, Frank, but I have to categorize this. Yes, use AI, whatever you need to use, to categorize, right? So, come to me with solution. Like, the solution is this, and then if you have if you create another problem, no problem. Let's create another solution to the next problem. Right? But this is the right way of doing things, and because we really knew what works, we just 10x that, right? So very simple, right? So if a lot of people saying, Frank, this video was fantastic, well, let's do more of YouTube videos. If this,
so you did, I like that. So you did TikTok 4 to 5 months, and it just didn't show up in self-report. Never.
Exactly. Yeah, there was one lead literally, but it's TikTok, one lead.
How much do you think you would have needed to see? Like, would have been 3 enough, 10 enough, 30 enough? Like, at which point do you say, okay, I like what I see, let's continue?
I would say, if I would do it again, I would say 100 TikToks. If I do 100 TikToks over a span of whatever period, like the data set has to be big enough, right?
Yeah.
And then we can always argue,
So if you post every day, you do Monday through Friday, that's 5 months of posting if you do 100. Yeah. That's pretty solid.
Right? And then you say, okay, we've done 100 of these. Then you look at the attribution. If the attribution says there's nothing, then just drop it. That's fine. So, like, I think one of the biggest problems with people out there, the founders, is like they're really scared to fail, essentially. To really figure out what works, what doesn't, you need to run a bunch of experiments, right? And figure out what works, what doesn't. And yes, most of them will not work out. It's fine.
Yes.
And then you just keep what works and scale those, and that's how you need to do. So back in the days, TikTok, cool. Yeah, let's try it out, see what we can get. Do we have some competitors? Yes, there was one competitor on TikTok. Well, if they do it, maybe we should do it. Let's test it out, see how it goes. You should be always in the mindset of what's the next test that we're running. Every month, we always think, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? I can tell you I have some crazy tests lined up. Crazy for the next month.
What are you most excited about? What's the weirdest one?
The next crazy one?
Yeah.
It's going to take some time, but we're going to write a book.
Okay. Like
called the
you're
book.
gonna write a book about AI agents?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly. Why would an AI agent company write a book? If you listen to a lot of smart people out there, right? There's a lot of people that do the typical stuff, YouTube, whatever, SEO, and so that.
Yeah.
But there's also another piece in marketing called monumental marketing. It's called that way. That's what Nathan Latka talks about quite a lot. You can listen to Nathan Latka. You can listen to a lot of people. But there's other assets that you need to build and do to become really the authority in the space, right? To up your game. It's like called level 2, right? The level 1 we've done our bits. What is the level 2? And you can call it momentum, whatever. But one of those things is actually writing a book. I can send a book for free to my customers, right? That's going to be one thing, right? I could use it for like things like that. People will see, okay, Frank wrote a book, sure, and then that leads to potentially down funnel conversion. That will be a test, right? So I don't know actually, but you should not be afraid of testing stuff, right? We're a profitable business. Let's run some tests. Let's see what works, what doesn't, and
Now, couple
always do.
comments.
Yeah.
One, I had Wes Bush on the podcast. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
him, the PLG guy. I
Yes.
asked him because we went down the things that he's doing to generate customers, right? And he wrote a book. He actually published 2 books. He's writing his 3rd book right now. He's posting basically daily on LinkedIn. He has a weekly newsletter that he sends out. He's doing a monthly webinar that he's doing, and he's speaking at conferences like SaaS Open. And I asked him if out of all of these things you can only keep one, which one would it be? And without thinking, he said the book. And he said the
There you
book
go.
because it is the business. It helps him think through what they do for customers. And I mean, they are in the implementation consulting space. So this is also the piece that allows them to think through what even the thing is that they implement with customers. But it also then is the piece that allows him to position him as the number one authority, because how many books have been written about how to implement a PLG motion for a SaaS business? None except his, more or less, right? And so it's a big credibility builder. The second comment I have is I agree with the experiments. The problem with that is that doing 100 TikTok videos and doing that for 5 months, most companies do not see that as an experiment. That's a commitment. That's almost half a year that you're doing something, right? When people think of an experiment, they think of let's do this for a week, let's do this for a month, maybe let's do this for a quarter. But I mean, the way that I know that this stuff is not linear. So if you do TikTok for a month, you might get nothing. You do TikTok for 3 months, you might still get nothing. You keep doing it until month 6, and suddenly things start clicking. So how do you think about what is the right amount of time to give an experiment to actually get enough data to make an educated decision on whether it's actually working or not, while not just saying we're going to do TikTok for a year and hope that something changes? What's the right middle ground?
I think the right middle ground is if you focus, like if you call commitment, all right, but with that, we can just call it a test. It's a big test, but it's fine. There's small tests and big tests, but everything is a test in my head. So I typically like to keep it 3 to 6 month time frame. And if somebody says to me it's going to take a year, I'm going to say, how about we 10x the volume so we can make a decision in 3 to 6 months? We don't have a year. What if we only have 3 months? How much output do we need to generate to get
I
to
love
some
that.
form of statistical significance where we can comfortably say this was a success or a failure, right? So, and I can tell you that when something works in our business, we're trying to figure out how to 10x that. Like I told you, right? So something's working, we know it's working, we know all the metrics going up, and the next question becomes, how can we do it 10x? And that's it, like 10x, at least 10x, because like if I'm discussing something with my team, like the fact that we're discussing something, it has to be something big. Because we
Right.
run a lot of tests. Let's not discuss the small fish, the big fish stuff. Something that we need to 10x. And then somebody said, Frank, I can't do it. It's fine. Outsource, whatever that is, tool, whatever that is. But plug in the right consultants. A lot of people also are afraid working with consultants. But if it's about the speed, just plug it in, right? We like, for example, I wanted to run this Reddit ads test. And nobody in my team knew. And I even though I used to work at Google and I know how to run ads, I don't know how to run the Reddit ads.
Yeah.
What's the fastest way to test Reddit ads? Well, just hire an agency and let them just run that, right? So again, at least 2 to 3 months, right? That's why a lot of these agencies that you're working with, consultants, they say it typically does take 2 to 3 months to see something, and it's fine to commit to that. Yes, a lot of people will be stingy and they don't want to do this, etc. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that founders make is they don't generate what's called learnings, and you can only generate learnings from testing stuff. And sometimes you literally need to do multiple tests in parallel. You just need to
Right.
make sure you have the right tracking, attribution, and everything in place, right, to make a decision what works and what doesn't. So if you take, for example, a big company like Google, on the search on Google search, you don't see the test that Google is running, but Google is running a gazillion of tests on that
Right.
the machine there. Gazillions of tests, but nobody's seeing that. It's fine. Like they're literally going to move something by a pixel, just to maximize revenue because they're trying to figure out how to literally squeeze the most from Google.com, right? As a thing. And
So I
so we're
know
not in
we're running up on time. So maybe one question: what is something that you're trying to 10x right now because you know it's working, and you're now trying to think about how to 10x it?
I would say programmatic SEO right now is the next 10x. We figured out a way of how can we get to 10x, and we're essentially building we can call that infrastructure or the base to get to 10x, right? So we're building that base, and so we definitely have a path to 10x that within 6 to 12 months.
Hmm.
So when you have these learnings, you definitely are saying, okay, we need to 10x this, and that's it. You plow ahead and you get 10x more budget if it needs to be, whatever, right? So everything that we do is all about compounding, and it has to be at scale, right? It's not like, okay, we're gonna do 1, 2, 3 things. No, something has to be like in like hundreds of numbers. Like, so YouTube videos could be another one, right? So how can we be like Mr. Beast? Every day we do a video, right?
Yeah, I wanted to
We're
share my
gonna-
screen here because I think not a lot of B2B companies are doing YouTube, and
Yes,
definitely not the way that you guys are doing it, which is you're definitely thoughtful around, thumbnail. This is kind of like the Stephen Bartlett, look to
yes.
the thumbnail. And it's interesting. I mean, some of these videos get over 1,000 views, 1.3K views. I don't know what's the best perform. 11,000 views. Here, Mailforge. Oh, this is probably an ad, right? You put some budget behind this.
Yeah, it just says on the website as well, right? So it also because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
leads
So
to not
this
next one,
this
next
one
one.
maybe.
Yeah, there's some
Um,
playlists that we do, for example, right? So we can send people to playlists, onboarding playlists, maybe stuff like that.
yeah,
So we're definitely trying to think about the YouTube strategy.
yeah. And when
We're
you
not best in
say,
class, but we're
sorry,
definitely doing pretty good.
yeah, for when you said, like, because you mentioned earlier that, like, hey, you had this guy working on TikTok, that wasn't
Yeah,
working, but you saw some stuff with YouTube, so now you put him on YouTube. That's the guy that's doing the YouTube now. Like, when you say it's starting to actually have an effect, like, is it
yeah.
1% of signups come from YouTube, or is it like
It's
20? Like, give me a rough ballpark of what this is
so
doing.
so this is not about how many signups come from YouTube.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not about that. It's
Okay.
about, okay, if we look at YouTube, so let's say we've got to look at GA data.
Mm-hmm.
Right now in GA, YouTube has the highest conversion rate to sign up, the highest.
Mm,
It's not about how many signups, it's about what is the conversion. And if the conversion is the high, that means high quality videos, great,
mm-hmm.
fantastic, excellent. Because sometimes the attribution, something else will get the attribution. We all know how GA works. If
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
doesn't kind of read up, GA is not really built for B2B stuff. So, but if in GA it says that for the conversions that we're able to see, and we have it's the highest conversion rate right now, great videos. Yes, I am thinking, how can I also naturally 10x YouTube? It's a different ball game. You need to also get a lot of other interesting people. There's a whole different strategy about YouTube, right? And there's a whole agency that work on YouTube, right? It's a definitely super interesting and creative space, right? You need these creative juices. I'm not actually the best guy, by the way, on all things YouTube. I almost think of like Simon, so who's the guy that's working on YouTube. I'll leave it to him. Apart from YouTube, he's also right now we're gonna spin up a Udemy course, which gonna
Mm,
help bring more users into that. So it's about thinking about the YouTube stratosphere and thinking about again, like Mr. Beast mode. How can we make this the number one channel where folks congregate about building pipe? How can we do that? Right?
mm,
And let's start with baby steps.
mm-hmm.
First, it's going to be emailed. We're going to talk about LinkedIn. We're going to talk about calling and a bunch of different things, but really to educate the audience. And you need these characters, let's call it. Like
Yeah,
Simon. That's really good on
yeah,
YouTube. But I'll give you another idea. How could I? So this is what I call content piece, and then kind of
yeah.
SEO is also content, right? But content is king, right? And then I'm thinking like, what's the next level for content? And if you think about some of the biggest and most successful companies, so let's take an example in my space. There will be a company called SalesLoft.
Mm-hmm.
SalesLoft is a company, sales engagement tool, has been around for 10 years, blah, blah, blah. And they have transformed an SDR called Tom Boston, who was an SDR at SalesLoft. He was doing really cool, kind of content on LinkedIn. And then they're like, damn, that content is so good, and he's getting so much engagement. How
Mm-hmm.
about he's going to become the evangelist? How's them? So I call
Mm-hmm.
this head of brands.
Mm,
They're really the face of
yeah.
the brand. When I think about Sales Lab, I think about Tom Boston, right? When somebody thinks about Salesforge, I bet a lot of people think about Simon. And then on LinkedIn, we're still missing this person, right? I'm still looking for this magical individual. Who is the face of? It cannot be me. It has to be somebody else, right? So it's not
Why not
Simon.
you?
Somebody in the future.
Why not you?
Because I'm a founder and I do so much stuff. Yes, I could keep like there's definitely what's called the founder stream, the content stream.
Mm-hmm.
But then the smartest companies, right? If your ICP is on YouTube, you need to figure out how do you unlock your team. So let's call your go-to-market team. Can you make them post stuff? But at the same time, somebody needs to spearhead. Somebody needs to be the
Sure.
brand. And it's
Yeah.
typically above the founder because I cannot be sitting all day long and shooting great videos. I would love to do that, by the way, right? But unfortunately, I have to do some other things, like jump on the calls and demos. I still do a lot of demos with customers. I'm speaking to them, etc. So this is really a full-time job. Somebody that will, do this on a daily basis, do editing and everything. And yes,
How do you think about, last question, how do you think
yeah,
about the risk of that? The good thing with YouTube is the YouTube channel is the Salesforge channel. So even if Simon quits or leaves or goes to a competitor, you own the YouTube channel, you have the followers, you can try to hire someone else to keep doing the videos. On LinkedIn, company pages don't really perform so well.
yes,
You need to post through the person's personal profile. Let's say you hire someone and they do an amazing thing, posting content on LinkedIn, all about creating pipeline in Salesforge. They build up a massive audience through the resources and tools that you
Mhm.
give them. And now they have 50,000 followers of sales leaders and founders and CEOs, a very valuable audience. And now they realize, wait a second, I'm sitting on a massive gold mine. I'm getting my salary here, which might be whatever they're getting paid, 150K per year. And instead, I should go out and do my own thing. I should go out and go to a competitor who will pay me twice as much because they realize I'm sitting on a massive audience of ICPs and I own the authority because it's me, Tom Forge, or me, Ethan Thormeier, that people associate this authority with. And now they leave and do their own thing or join a competitor. How do you think about that risk?
So if I would be in the shoes, and so I know a lot of influencers, right? So in the space and how they can transition from company A to company B, company C, they would not typically join a competitor. This is has a negative impact on brand. Typically, when you're leaving a company, there's all these exit clauses, whatever. When
Sure.
you're leaving, one of the things will be like you cannot work for a competitor for X number of years because you were the brand face of this. So
I
that's
mean, I
one
think
of
of
those.
Devin Reed right now. I don't know if you follow Devin Reed. He was the head of content and thought leadership at Gong,
Yes.
and then was hired as the head of thought leadership and content at Clary, which is a direct competitor to Gong. Now, back then, it was more like he just brought his expertise and he did an incredible job building up Gong's content machine. And then
Mhm.
he applied that knowledge to Clary. Now he's much more of this thought leader. He has a big audience. People know him. Like, it would be even crazier now because he would bring an audience of, I don't know, 30,000, 50,000 sales leaders from Gong to Clary as the thought
Mhm.
leader.
There's definitely the risk, right? But I can tell you, I've never done this, right? I'm a first-time founder, by the way.
Yeah,
Right? So everything I'm telling you, I'm telling you as a first-time founder.
I
So
love
I've
it.
never done this, but I have a good gut feel. It's a good strategy, right? So
Yeah.
how do I feel about risk? Well, I have these, 40 great individuals on my team, and I have trust, in people that they will not, throw me under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they could, right? Yes, things could happen. Yes, they transition somebody else. But this is when when I'm thinking about head of brand, I'm not thinking about getting one of those, big guys that already have a brand. No, I'm
Mm.
looking to build up a brand that has the right ingredients. The
Mm-hmm.
brand, an individual who could be really great, but
Mm-hmm.
could not realize the potential. So
Mm.
I'm gonna mold that rough diamond to be the next influencer on LinkedIn. That's really who I'm looking for. It's like so that
Mm-hmm.
person, nobody would know that person. That person's probably not on LinkedIn even potentially. So
Fair.
this is why I aggressively go to conferences. By the way, another thing that I do. You mentioned a lot of things, right? From West, I do all of this as well. Going to conferences, etc. So I'm trying to meet these interesting individuals, and typically they will be probably in sales, right? Most likely they'll be in sales, and so
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to convert them from sales to ultimately becoming influencers, right? So that's
Yeah.
really the best conversion, and then build a brand. I'm gonna, pump a lot of cash, whatever you need to make sure you become the face of the Forge.
Yeah.
and I'll be the second phase. But how else do you do risk? Don't just bank maybe on one individual. Try and do 2 or 3, right? So that if the one person leaves, nothing kind of tanks.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you can do is you could still have this, let's call it under the head of brand, these, let's call it the other, folks out there, like the sales team, etc. They posting, etc. I'm a
Sure.
big believer, like, if you already have, like not everybody should be posting, right? But definitely you need 5 to 10 individuals. Let's say we have right now 40, right? Something in
Mhm.
my team, I need 5 to 10 individuals posting on a weekly basis, like at least once a week. If you can get to that velocity, we're doing a good job, right? We then across all the individuals, we generate X number of impressions, and then we're trying to congregate all these folks that we're going after, right, around our brand. So when we then send a cold email or LinkedIn DM or give them a cold
For
call,
sure.
we're not strangers because we're feeding great content. They're more likely to respond to you, right? So
Yeah.
this is what's called inbound led outbound.
Outbound.
Here you go. Yes,
Yeah.
inbound led outbound. Here you go. That's the one.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Warm
So that's how
outbound,
we
lots
figure
of
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's another thing.
Frank,
You have social selling and
I
then outbound. So yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I feel like it was super, super information dense. You're running multiple companies slash brands under an ecosystem. You are doing many, many things when it comes to your go to market between founder brand and programmatic SEO and having someone run your YouTube channel. So I feel like there were lots of nuggets in here for people. So thank you so much for your time. If people want to check either you out or check out Salesforge, the links will be in the description. And yeah, thank you for joining me, Frank.
Thanks for having me.